This is my grandpa, Lewis Haynes, and he was in Panama during World War II.
Well, when I start, first let me start by saying this covered the years of 1942 through 1945. And I imagine things are much different now than they were then. At that time, as I remember, the people of Panama were very poor. Most of the wealth was controlled by very few families. It was a real melting pot of nationalities down there. There were all races down there, colors and creeds. About the one thing that the Panama people really liked was their Church of the Golden Altar. And I did have the opportunity to see that. It was the one national shrine they had. And the Panama was split up into the country of Panama and the Canal Zone. My time was spent on the Pacific side, most of it at Howard Air Force Base. The country is real narrow, as you can see by looking at a map, and you can go from coast to coast by train in an hour and 5 minutes, and that included 2 or 3 stops along the way. What we were doing there, I should imagine, was to protect the canal, because that was a big means for shipping ships from the west coast to the east coast and back and vice versa. It saved them going all around the Cape of Africa. They were going through there continuously, days and nights. I've seen a lot of warships go through there, some in good shape and some really beat up, especially the carrier Franklin. I still can't understand how that ship ever stayed afloat as bad as it had been hit. We used to get quite a few planes coming through there. They would land there taxiing them over to Europe. They would come down there, we would work on them, put a modification on them. We had a lot of P-40s that come in early in the war. They had to be all modified with their guns. And that was an awful, miserable job. You laid on your back, laying there holding a 50 caliber machine gun over your head in 5 to 10 minutes. And believe me, they really got heavy. We had a lot of civilians down there with us. They were all Americans also. A lot of ex-GIs were working in there as civilians. If you got any other questions specifically that you'd like to know? Oh, one thing. Parts of Panama are very beautiful. It's quite mountainous country. You might not realize it by looking at it. And you're getting a tremendous amount of rain during the winter months. I remember one winter, it was around Christmas, I believe. It rained for 7 consecutive days. And it don't just rain there, it pours. We had so much water, it was so deep, it come right up into our barracks. There was about a foot of water on the first floor. You had to wade to the mess hall. There was water on the floor there, and one large alligator was shot from one of the barracks windows. But everything just overflowed so badly.
Well, you were there for 3 years.
Approximately.
And, and you were telling me that it was very boring.
It was.
And so, like, what did you do day to day?
Day to day?
Yeah, day to day.
Well, the first thing we'd do, we'd go down and have to pre-flight the airplanes that were there, that we had. I was in a headquarters outfit, and we had either 3 to 5 planes. We'd have to go down and pre-flight them every morning in case they were needed for something. We flew a lot of mail out to the outposts. It would come into our base, and if we could get someone to fly it out, they would get their mail. So they really appreciated us and really treated us nice when we got there. Nothing was too good for us when we brought in the mail. Also, they would fly mercury missions at times. I remember one day in particular, we were really socked in with fog and rain. And out at one of the bases, some boy had a ruptured appendix. There was one, they happened to have a weather squadron there at the time. There was one pilot that was allowed to fly in that weather. He flew out and got the boy, the GI, and got him back. The kid did survive, fortunately.
Like, when did you actually protect the canal? Just like,
Well, we really didn't bring in an Air Force outfit too much. They had the artillery and a lot of artillery posts down there. They were really the prime defenders of it. All we would do, if they would lose track of the Jap carrier, we would go on an alert and parade around. We would have to be with our machine. I happened to be with a machine gun crew in case of an alert. We did have that a few times. We had a lot of practice alerts, but if it was a real thing, you knew it, because they insisted you have boxes of ammunition, not just a couple of clips.
how old were you when you went?
Oh, let's see, 43, I was there about 22, I think, when I hit there.
Okay, so you were in the Air Force, right?
Well, one thing I was said about the canal zone in the Republic of Panama being different. Panama City reminded me of New York City when you go in it on the train. It was an awful slum condition. While the canal zone was all government housing, very nicely built, nicely kept lawns, very neat. And the natives were not allowed to use the PX unless they worked for the government, and then they had their own PX, because the prices were so much cheaper in there than they had to pay. I really felt sorry for a lot of those people, because they really didn't have anything at all.
Well, when you went into the war, were you drafted or did you
I was
volunteer?
drafted.
Were there any memorable events that you just stick out in your mind?
Well, the only one as I can recall one sad event. The commanding officer at another base had borrowed one of our aircraft. It happened to be mine, when I took care of it. And I got a call on the phone. He asked me if he had left his sunglasses in the plane. I said, I don't think so, but I will look. I could not find them. Went back and answered. Told him, no, I'm sorry. He says, okay, I must have left them somewhere else. And I was talking to another GI at the other base. He says, holy Moses, he said, the colonel just crashed and was killed. I had been talking to him not 10 minutes before. He had crashed and was killed in the plane. He dipped a pot. They were landing on water with this particular one. They had modified it. He dipped a pontoon. 2 were killed and 1 escaped in the crash.
What effects did the war have on you?
I don't really know if it had any bad effects.
Did it have any good effects?
Not really.
Just didn't change?
Just time out of your life, Alyson.
Did being away so long have had any effect on your home life?
Well, it's bound to have. Because your grandmother and I were married while I was in the service. And I left about a week later. And I never did get home.
So you for 3 years.
Never no furloughs. I had one once, because they told us we had been there too long. That was a sad day. Because I was looking forward, waiting, 2.5, 3 years to come home. You wait your turn, you build it up there, and then you don't get home. Any more questions, Alyson?
No.
Okay.